Torah and technology, or the 3 P's, the pleasures, pressures, and perils of technology. That's in the descending order. My father-in-law used to say that, an Aveira and a mitzvah, they have really 2 things in common. They both involve an oy and an a. What do you mean? An Aveira starts off with an but afterwards it's oy. Whereas a mitzvah often starts with an oy, how can I do it? It's so hard. But afterwards you feel good. So if you're talking about I think I got the order right, the pleasures, pressures, and perils of technology. So if it's starting out with the pleasure, with the and it's ending with the perils, the oi, so then perhaps that's an indication of which of those 2 it's connected to. Now, obviously, I'm not trying to pin technology as a whole into Aveira, but I think the point of this class, certainly we've rearranged the order a bit, where David Cohen, who was supposed to have been here today, had a problem and was not able to be here. I am going to be presenting some sources. We're going to do some learning together, and I state at the outright, this is technology. Trees are biotech. So they're God tech. I state outright, we've really heard a lot about, both from my first presentation and from the presenter last week of Ariel, that kind of about the pluses in using technology for the good and for the divine. I want to present the downside. I want to present the dark side. Obviously, I remember hearing once a lecture, probably 25 years ago, at the ADOC conference in New York City, the Conference of Modern Orthodox Judaism, and Rav Shaul Berman got up to speak about, I think, about media and television. This was before the internet. And he said something like this: I didn't come here to defame television. I think it's already done a good enough job on its own. So, some of the obvious things that you don't need me, and you certainly don't need these sources to talk about the pressures and the perils. But I do want to talk about something which we may not notice. Perhaps we'll decide later with the kind of collaborating with Judy whether or not this will continue to next week or not. But I will give you enough information if it doesn't continue to next week, that you can draw your own conclusions and connect the dots. I want to start out, before we get into the learning, I just want to state something which may not be so obvious. And it's been presented both by me and by Rabbi Ariel last week, as though the technology that so many of us are familiar with, when I say technology, I mean printing on paper, and I mean a table and plastic chairs. All technology is so all-encompassing. What we're really talking about today, at least, and so many of us, is what we call information technology. And specifically, what we're talking about is internet, and more specific, smartphones. And today, I want to even zero down on something even more specific within that funnel, social media. And I'm going to talk about social media, which is really the way we communicate using information technology. And I want to just at the outset kind of take a step back or challenge some of the assumptions we've made up till now. And assumption number one is kind of that, yes, as I said, we always had challenges with technology, from the sword to the printing press, to the plow, to the satellite dish, the radio, and okay, there's just another one of those things. And I think all of us intuitively feel this is a little different. And I could probably, if I tried, make a case that no, it's not. This is exactly how they felt with the printing press, and they told you the story of the witch hunt. And However, the experts do point out probably two distinctions between everything up till now and what we're dealing with in our pocketbooks or in our pockets. And difference number one is the sheer, I'll call it firepower, horsepower, or computer power, the speed. We have reached the point where the algorithms, I'm not going to go now on how all this stuff works, but how the algorithms, the pattern, the framework which drives this technology and presents us the information that we're presented with is so, I don't want to say infinitely, but almost infinitely powerful that even the makers barely understand how it works. And it certainly is much more powerful than anything our brains can understand, be aware of, or even if we want to develop some kind of a free say, a free choice. Do I want this? How I want this? Because it understands us better than we understand ourselves. And I'm going to give you what we say in Hebrew, a Macabbi, a source, and hopefully you can, for those of you who have access to either the email or we're using email technology or WhatsApp technology through the group, I'm going to send you a link for at your own time. You can choose whether you want to see what I'm going to send you. I'll tell you what at the end, where you can find more of a, not a not a Torah-dic elaboration, but more of a professional, technological, societal analysis of the statements I just made and the statement I'm about to make now. And the second thing is that I don't know if it was this way in the past or not. We can talk about that another time. But today, many, if not all, experts agree that technology is not neutral. Pardon. Did you see what I sent you or I told you to look at? That's what I'm going to send everybody. You watch it? Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Today we're going to have to end a little early, so I'm going to try to be kind of very concise and just present the material, and you can digest it maybe with Judy in discussion afterwards at 12:50. Sorry, at 1:50. Technology is not neutral, meaning that technology is invented by people, and the maker has a purpose. The maker has a design, and embedded in the way it works, there's a certain rationale behind that. When what's his name? No, the good guy. There was a guy called. There is a guy called. No. It's escaping my mind right now. Doesn't make a difference. Was an ethicist at Google, and he was involved with designing Gmail, something so harmless as Gmail. When he Brett, when he became when he became aware that, hey, the way we're designing this, the way it works, whether it be even just the design and color scheme down to how the notifications work and the different way the inbox, things which we take for granted, this is addictive, right? And we're not even talking about Facebook or things like that. And he wrote some kind of this like manifesto to the higher ups. I don't know if his job was terminated, but he basically left Google and founded the Center for Humane Technology to fight basically what big tech, how is basically not neutral. There's a goal, there's a means to it, there's an ends to it. And I'll just kind of, we're going to get into the learning and it'll come out afterwards, but the idea that it's not by accident that it's addictive. One of my Hasidic friends here pointed out so wisely, a guy from Meir, he said, he likes to dabble in building or renovations, and I have the latest Black Decker, 3-speed function, multi-XR power drill, but I don't find myself just kind of in my spare time playing with the drill, kind of wonder what it can do and what would happen if I do it that way. He picks up the drill when he needs to drill, right? And if you're like so many, you realize that there's something so interesting about this technology that we just kind of want to explore, figure out. Let me just check again. Maybe that really important message just came, and I have to actually check again, really, right before I go to sleep or daven or whatever it is. And it's not by accident. These people know how we work better than we know how we work, and they have an interest. I'll just say 2 points. This should be the closing, but because it's so tachlis, I wanted to make sure I kind of gave the battle call, if you will. I'll just say 2 things that will be in this Mara Mokum, the source I'm going to send out a link to. Point number 1 is made by this Brad, whatever, and is that there are only 2 industries that call their clients users. Right? The narcotics industry and technology users. How many users are on Twitter? And second point made, if you like that point, then you should really see what I'm going to see. I saw it a long time ago. I think worth it. Judy has her hesitations. She'll send out her hesitations. I'm going to ask you to send out the link, and you can. I think it's worth. Okay, all right. And I didn't want to show it here. Okay, I got it. Because we're going to learn Torah here in a few minutes. But the second really amazing point is, gosh, it's so convenient, so useful. This Gmail. I remember the old days of email and WhatsApp. Pictures and the grandkids, the whole family is great, isn't it? How does that work? You do that, and you send this, and you can have your contacts and this. That's so amazing, great. How much do you pay a month? Nothing. What? You pay for your phone service. You guys don't pay for your WhatsApp or your Facebook or your Twitter or your Gmail or your Instagram. But how much is that costing? Paying people, high-tech employees are pretty, they make a good wage, right? These companies are worth, Elon Musk wanted to buy Twitter for $44 billion, but I'm not paying. I don't have Twitter, but how many people on Twitter are paying customers? I don't think any of the however many billion. So as the experts point out so wisely, that if you're not paying for the service, then you're not the customer. You are the merchandise. I didn't say that exactly as it should be. If you aren't paying for the merchandise, you are the merchandise. The companies are selling you, your data, your habits, your preferences, your information, your everything to who? Who's the real customer? The advertisers or the CIA or whoever it is, Chinese, right? So it just makes you think about, if it's, I challenged last week, Gorenstein, is that how you pronounce his last name? Yeah. Gorenstein, something so easy come, usually we're suspicious of it. Well, he was more optimistic. I'm saying I have 2 challenges really tonight. Is this really like any other technology, or have we crossed the line in its ability to know us and influence more than we're able to have awareness of? And what are we losing by taking advantage? We're taking advantage of this free service. Yes, we're taking advantage of it. Yes. Do we have a case here of Frankenstein? So obviously this is all talked about in the Torah explicitly.
He keeps going on that there's all of these addictions, but I feel like what's addiction? The R of it, like the difference between. No, he kept going on that you're addicted to anything. Food is addiction. So technology is it. But what's the difference between technology addiction?
Well, I would say that there's one difference. That was what he answered. I would say that there's a difference. At least I'm not talking about. Maybe you're right when it comes to. They still have Hershey bars or whatever. Whatever sweet foods are, or corn chip. The difference is this. There's a machshavat chila, right? it's bad enough, us having to face, we have tough stuff in life, and we all have an atiyah, we all have a tendency to run away. And we can run away and check out by engaging in all kinds of comforting behaviors beyond what we need, whether it be food, alcohol, drugs, gambling, etc., shopping, etc., etc., etc. But those things are like, kind of, there's a certain balance in them, and it's Aryeh Tzahara. What I'm claiming today is that the technology that we're talking about specifically, social media and big tech on the internet, is already not balanced. It's already seeking us out. It's like the cigarette, the problem with cigarettes. Cigarettes, I'm not such an expert in this. I've never smoked in my life, but from what I remember seeing on the news, there was already a problem of being addicted to nicotine until it was discovered that the cigarette companies were adding addictive elements. Okay, but nicotine, it's tobacco, it's a grass, it's a plant, it's your choice how you use it, not my problem. Yeah, but what if you're adding things that I don't even know about that create that I don't have a free choice anymore. I don't have, you have a direct line into the most basic elements of my psyche that I'm not even aware of, and even if I want to, even I think I'm aware of it. You're so smart. I'm not with the nicotine. I'm talking about the algorithms. And guys, if I don't come back next week, just hear that? Okay, we're just Anyway, so
everybody uses VPN.
I'm not an expert enough, but there are steps you can look at. My internet filter doesn't even let me look there, the Center for Humane Technology, but you can look there. I actually wanted to, I'll send out this information. There are people talking about a digital Shabbos, goyim. They're meaning that take one day a week where you don't use your smartphone. There are goyim who are saying, I want to learn, I really do. Are there technical steps that one can take to kind of avoid this? For example, a VPN, I'm not sure what that stands for, but it basically is like you cut yourself off from like the big ocean and you kind of have a private direct line.
At least they can't trace.
Right.
They can't.
There are things you can do, and if you look into this, you could find out more about steps you can do. But even one thing, this is a guy talking, that he turned his cell phone into being black and white. Like there's some kind of setting you can do, and just as a hecker, a simon, that it shouldn't be so attractive. And when someone just want to, hey buddy, why is your cell phone black and white? Maybe that guy I told you about the kids in the nursery school, right? When I answer my call in the middle, teaching the kids, Rabbi, what do you have that remote control for, right? So the fact that mine is black and white, but in the big world out there in Silicon Valley, it is. It's or that, for example, but by the way, I'm just in parenthetical. That's why I lug around a tablet instead of a smartphone. It is a Vada Nativ Rabbanim, blah blah blah. But I don't want to have this way. I can't take it with me everywhere. I have to make a conscious choice. There are hergalim, customs that you can basically enact to create a healthier, just whether it be technological or just personal. So this there's a checklist out there on the Center for Humane Technology doing a tech restart. Hey, we're in restart. Restart is this place is called, about taking a pledge. I won't look at my phone at 30 minutes after I wake up or 30 minutes before I go to sleep. About talking about all kinds of things a person can do to kind of distance themselves from these habits. I wanted to make a comment, but I forgot what it was. So I'm going to just jump right in with the learning now. And yes, the Torah, how not, talked about this. This is the basic building blocks of our story as human beings. It's all about this tower of communication, this, I don't know what it's called, 5G or something like that, which connects all the people in the world, and some people thought it was dangerous, but they're lunatics. And the tower, what's it called? Oh, the 5G cell phone tower? No, what tower is it? Tower of Babel. do you not have a profounder story of society, technology, communication gone awry? And what I want to do is read this story in light of what we are dealing with today, through the eyes of not such a modern, a pre-modern or bordering modern Perushim of Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch and the Heming Dover, the Netziv of Volozhin, the Tzfat of Berlin. They were in their era dealing a lot with authoritarian communist regimes, the edge of the modern industrial society. But I think what they were talking about then, we can extrapolate to now as well. We're going to jump right in, identifying, I guess, 3 stages of the building of Migdal Bavel. What were they thinking? What was the plan? How did this begin? What was the problem? And how do you explain Hashem's solution of dispersing them and making their communication networks have a virus? So let's go into the text. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many? It's 9 psukim. An entire sugya condensed into 9 psukim, which means that you have to pay very close attention to the detail. But, in general, as we pointed out 2 weeks ago, when we learned the end of Bereshit, it's the end of Noah. The end of Bereshit, it's one of those boring sections. It's the end of the main story. It's like, this generation, 5G, 6G, 7G, you get to the 9th generation, and then Noah is born. It's like this one line that kind of breaks the monotony. So here in the middle of the end of Noah, we're looking at the generation, we took Noah, and how everyone, became the 70 nations of the world. You have the story. This is critical. And let's read it together, trying to look at what are the problems, what was the plan, what are the problems, and how are they solved. The entire earth was of one language and of common words. I'm just going to read it through all 9 verses. First, we'll go back and analyze. It was as they traveled from the east. Everything here is important. They found a plain, a valley, in the land of Shinar. And they settled there. Each man said to his counterpart, come, let us make bricks. And burn them thoroughly. The brick was for them as stone, and the clay was for them as mortar. Right? Mortar is what binds the bricks. Again they said, let us build us a city. Let us build a city for ourselves, and a tower, its top in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves. Lest we be dispersed abroad upon the face of the entire earth. The Lord came down to see the city, and the tower, that the children of man built. The Lord said, there are one people and there's one language for them all. And this is what they have begun to do. Now nothing of all that they plotted to do will be prevented from them. Come, let us descend and muddle their language there. So that one will not understand the language of his counterpart. The Lord dispersed them from there upon the face of the entire earth, and they ceased to build the city. Therefore its name was called Babel. Because the Lord confounded the language of all the earth there. And from there the Lord dispersed them on the face of the entire earth. That is the story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The beginning is the plan, like the project. The middle, I guess, is the reaction of Hashem, and then the end is what Hashem actually does to confound and befuddle this tower. So let's I'm just, if time would allow, I would allow more for kind of a collaboration and discussion. But let's listen to the words of Rav Shimshon Hirsch, how profound he reads the story, which we're so familiar with that sometimes we don't realize how deep it is and how relevant it is. So Rav Hirsch says as follows. I'm gonna, just because I only have it in Hebrew, I found it in German, if that would help anybody, but I couldn't find an online free version in English. So I'll just kind of give a bit of a synopsis, and then we can see it inside. And I'll translate it just to have a synopsis. So you see that this is the post Mabul, the post deluge generation. They're like the survivors, right? They all have the same roots. They have survivor mentality. The Torah says explicitly they don't just have the same language, but you saw the double language, right? It's Safa Achas Udvarim Achadim. There was not just one language, there were also common words. There was common notions and ideas between them. And you see here something very interesting, which I never noticed until I learned from Hirsch, is that the tower was predicated on an advance in technology. What is the technology that is developed here?
The bricks and
Bricks.
the mortar.
Why are bricks and mortar considered technology? What do bricks and mortar allow you to do?
Built.
To build. Well, how did people build before that? And what's the limitation of stones? Why can you only do 1 or 2 stories with stones?
There's no mortar.
They're not.
Maybe because they're all. Maybe they're just the way that they're naturally found. They don't lend well to balancing. There's another issue, which is location.
Oh, plans.
Materials like mud, things and stuff like that. So this is much more permanent.
This is much more permanent. They can establish a name for themselves. Rav Shimshon Hirsch is going to point out the issue of the fact that Torah goes into location. They found themselves in a valley as opposed to a mountain, where there were no stones, or the ability to build wherever you want and not to be dependent on the raw materials provided for you by nature in a certain place. They were able to create artificial stones, and that was the technological boom.
That's why it says the brick was as stone.
Right, the brick for them was as stone. Up till now was stones, and now all of a sudden they have bricks. I'll just point out one more thing about Peh, and then I would like to read it and let you listen to the side. And that to me is just interesting as a kind of a student of the history of technology and its impact on society. We find this connection, interestingly, between call it communication, the fact that they had, basically what's the Torah telling us? That there's a connection between technological advance and network communications, right? That's what you're talking about here. They feed into each other. They had the same language, and so they're able to create this technology. When you have great technology, you're able to have better communication. This loop. I'll give you 2 real life examples. Oh, it worked great. Meaning, if you define work. Meaning, were they able to build a big building?
They didn't work what they said, what they wanted to do.
Well, if God wouldn't have stopped them, it sounds like they would. Hashem explicitly says, if this is what they started to do, if this is what they've begun to do, now nothing at all that they plotted would be prevented from it. In other words, they're onto something here. Whereas Hashem had to intervene because whatever they were going to do, if left to their own, they would have accomplished it. It's not clear what the problem is here. The Torah does not explain what is wrong here. What?
What's wrong with the one?
Right. There seems to be nothing wrong, right? Which is kind of similar to our situation also. So if you define insight, if you mean Gemara and Medrash, yes. If you mean in the words that we just read, you don't see it. I could tease out here where Chazal were building it on, but if you just read it for the first time, and you didn't know that Medrash, I wonder what you would say.
Well, let us make
a name for ourselves.
Okay, a name for ourselves. Okay, so you go to this. You can go to. Wait a second. Where do we see again in the Torah building project, massive building project? Takes up like almost 9 parshas not 9 psukim, right? The building of the Mishkan, and there it's L'shakein, Makom Asher Yibchar Hashem, L'shakein Shmo Sham, right? The Persh actually talks about this, that two major building projects in Chamish Torah. One is the point is to bring man's name to heaven, right? Plant that American flag on the moon, and if you really believe they were. Okay, I don't know what I'm talking to here. I don't know. Okay, I yes, they were there. They were. I believe it. All right, we're not going there. Afterwards, at 12:15, I'm out of here. You can talk about that. Okay, because there's no wind on the moon. You see, and the flag was like that. Okay, I believe they were there, but you're free to believe what you like. So. Anyway, where were we? So, as opposed to another massive building project, which is the project of the Mishkan, which is the Shaken Shmo, the name of God, to bring it down here. So you could find, is that explicit? You have to find some problem here because the Torah says that God doesn't like it. But it's not clear, and I think it's interesting. You saw in the video that I sent you, or I sent you to in the beginning, all these people who have like major problems. They left the big tech industry. They're like, it's a big problem. What's the problem? Oh, yeah, the problem. Yeah, put the finger. What is the problem? It's hard sometimes to put the finger on the problem because the problem is maybe not right now. Even the problem could be. As Hashem says, if this is what they're doing now, I'll shame Sofa. Where is this leading? That's what I want to tell you. I have this. This is as diatribe I'm going to be. I'll tell you a story of Emunas Chachamim. Emunas Chachamim. I remember a walk on Friday night to a Tish in Mea Shearim, and I don't know if it's Mutter and Shabbos, but I like reading the billboards. This is going back at least 25 years, 25 years. The billboards of Mea Shearim plastered with black and white kashkavirim, and I see there, Tzom Kedoshim, holy flock, everyone by the Beis Din is called upon to only use now a Cellcom, a kosher phone, Ba'askamas Harabonim, the Beis Din for Tikshoret, the Beis Din for communication. This was the beginning of the kosher phone, and this was way before the smartphone. There weren't even phones with cameras in them. It was basically what they call now it was like this phone. That was like the regular phone. It just had SMS.
Oh, they didn't.
No, but that was where the general phones were holding. And then SMS, maybe a little video game, like a Snake or something like that, right? That's pretty much what they had. And I remember thinking, oh, come on, what a manipulation. Who's making a buck? This is like Wheaties being certified by the American Heart Association. This is like, oh, now the telephones are going to have an OU on them or the badats because they want, what could possibly need a hechsher on a cell phone? That was my reaction.
If you have someone who refused to transmit those in Iraq.
Oh, now we can talk, right? What could be? It wasn't many years later. I think this was even before the smartphone, where there was a new term. I don't think this was in the Haredi world, but certainly in the modern Orthodox world, which was half Shabbos. You keep Shabbos, I keep half Shabbos. What's half Shabbos? The first 19 and a half malachas, you keep, is that like what, till 12 hours, 12 and a half hours, you keep what's half, half Shabbos meant in the Triton, New York area, amongst modern Orthodox, mostly young kids, half Shabbos, you know what I meant? I keep Shabbos, boom, I text.
Right.
It's what texting like this, when you have to push the button 3 times, to get to the C, right?
Wow, that's a lot of zeros.
Yeah, she's like, at least with the smartphone, you can just push straight.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So, and I realized that you could take this, you can leave this. This is one man's take on it, but I'm a pretty open-minded, sometimes cynical person. I was like, this is an example of Ruach HaKodesh in the Chachamim, where to see so early on that this even texting could be so addicted and tap into some unforeseen weakness especially in teenagers that would like to communicate dabka by this and just can't go Shabbos. It could be their next door neighbor that they just saw in shul, but that somehow this is going to tap into some sociological, psychological pathology. Who would have thunk it? And coming down the line, when I saw that this was in Israel, the Haredi Hasidic world in America did not take that route. That was not the way Hasidic Jews did it in America. Haredi Yeshivish Jews did it in America. They went, from the SMS to the little phone with the camera, and then to the first smartphones, and then, after the sources left the Hebel, after the horses already left the stable, through the coop, they had this massive, they brought all the Rabbonim and the Rebbes, the Sacra Rebbe came, this, and they had filled up Met Stadium to have we had to call everyone, you had to have a filter, you had to have kosher, and they're like, yeah, who are you talking? In other words, they were not so successful. They were not successful in America.
They didn't do it early enough.
Right. In other words, the idea of foreseeing it, I'm not talking about the deepest, darkest things about it. And by the way, I believe I heard, I will quote this, even though it was in a personal conversation with my Rabbi, when I told him we were talking about America and Chutzlaritz, and he was just in America. I was talking about my own challenges, my family, my kids, and their weakness for technology, for smartphones. And his words were, and again, you can quote him, but only in this very specific context. He said, there's a Segula Americani. There's a Segula Americani, which means that as people from the Beis Din for technology, Tzfat told me that Haredim don't do well with internet. Like a Haredi person is kind of always have this. I'm not going to get into why this is, and I don't have the time right now, unfortunately. But I'm just telling you the main points, and maybe next week continue, where it has to do kind of with the black and white. I don't mean dress. It has to do with that when you grow up in a colorful modern Orthodox society, or more of a heterogeneous American society, American Yeshivish. So you kind of taught more the nuances, you have more of an internal filter. But if you grow up in a place which is like a Kulo Kodesh, there's it's kind of an all or nothing proposition. So that's why it's so dangerous. We said something about, America is so messed. Basically, saying America is so messed up, and from birth you already kind of have all these kind of corrupt influences. So whereas what one exposure here to yeshiva bacher basically will make him go off the derech immediately and require years of therapy psychologically. There, you can wake up in the morning, put on tefillin, and go on the daf. Because you have so much, it's America. The problems of America are working for it. You're not as raw. You're not as tmimistic. So whatever my point is, the point is that they did not, there was not a boundary set early by the rabbinic leadership in America, and and they pay a much heavier price today in America than they do now. Than in Israel. Yeah. They're also, that's what I'm saying. That's why I brought the other side of the Segula Americite. So I hear it. I'll just point out something interesting. The idea was that it's kind of a cynical statement saying that there's a certain segula, there's a certain inexplainable advantage and power that American frum people have, that even when they're exposed to bad stuff on the web, they can continue to serve Hashem, whereas Israelis, Haredis, are much more just blown to smithereens. It's much more all or nothing. That's what he means. And they have right. I think this would drive us crazy in my family. Again, we're not going to debate this right now. We're just pointing this out, and we can debate this afterwards. this would drive us crazy, my wife and I, where we're living in pristine, kosher, Namahav, and technological family, and dealing with the children who are every, trying and pushing the boundaries. Pushing is a nice way to say it. And some of my children. And interestingly, I've already mentioned my children. I'll say the Shevach, one of my children who, from the earliest of ages, would do anything to have access to everything. Later on, when he was like not observant, even was like, Abba, please buy me a kosher phone. This stuff is making, Facebook is driving me insane. It was not from Frumkeit. This was just from having a certain. And I refer you to the book, Goyish book, why you should delete your social media accounts now. The book out there, you can look that up. So coming back to will drive us crazy. And my friends from Gush Etzion who went to yeshiva together, and they stayed modern. That's how I grew up. The family, the parents have any smartphone, probably no filter, this, that. And these kids, lo pasuk pu mimigirse, and they have any phone they want, they probably have a smartphone, but they can't take this, they don't, you can't get them to eat the chicken soup at the Friday night table when they're guests because they can't take their hand away from the Gemara. Go figure. So I'll just point out just one little thing. This is basically two sheets, if in the world of internet filters. Okay, so much for Migdal Bavel, but I'll end with Migdal Bavel. But I'll just point out in internet filters, another beautiful thing. I talked about the apple, right? If you have that, let's talk about 3 fruits. 2 weeks ago, I talked about the apple and what that symbolizes, the Eitz Hadas. There's another 2 fruits out there in the world of internet, and that is the rimon, which is the pomegranate, and etrog, which is another kind of more strict Haredi internet filter, both by the same company, both founded by the Rabbi Hezder Ramat Gan, Rabbi Shapiro, who again, with tremendous vision, saw at least that in his tzibur of the Tilomi, there was no chance of going remote control. So, he basically, one of his, I think, Bogrim, his alumnus, one of his alumni, he encouraged him to found a high-tech company that would enable Rimon. But it's actually a remiss to the Gemara in Hagiga, where the Gemara asks how Rabbi Meir was allowed to learn from Acher, his Rebbe who went off the derech, Lisha ben Abuya. And it says that Rimon Matzah, Pirio Ochal, Klipa Zorak, that he ate the inner fruit of it, but discarded the klipa, the shell, the bad part. And that's why Rimon is called Rimon, because it's like about the avodas of biburim, which is necessary in the Eitz Hadas, right? Which is the Eitz Hadas of Tov V'Ra. We have Choshev and Or, Misham Shem B'Yerbubia. Whereas the internet filter, which is marketed to and used by the Haredi world, I think Rimon is a major problem. Okay, you got me. I'm going to hit my tyrant. Don't use Rimon, because the assumption of so many of these filter systems, even the non-Jewish ones provided by Microsoft and Net Nanny, things like that, is that, guys, it's for the kids. It's for the kids. That the assumption is like the adult can handle himself, right? I can. The kids never, if they don't have das and they can slip into dark zone. That is not the way Yahadis looks at it. We have to be honest, and it's about us, our own digital habits, and how we use it. And therefore, any filter that lets you change at your whim, what level or what sites are in your whitelist or in your blacklist, I think they're missing something. But I understand, that maybe the less, maybe someone's not going to want to put themselves in a situation where put yourself into handcuffs. You have to have a lot of self-awareness to be willing to talk about something. That's the idea of esrog. Esrog, of course, represents, is it really an esrog? No, but what does the idea of the filter esrog represent? It tries to provide, Rimon basically recognizes that you're going to hit some rough spots where you're going to have to do an avodas habirurim, kind of a selection on your own, with the kind of, you're going to get a little flicker of flack. You're going to get a little beat up or dented by it. Whereas the idea of esrog is that they have kind of created navigated a trajectory through the internet that is esrog. Esrog is like, the best of the 4 species. It represents like the tzaddikim. It represents like there's no need for the Avodas Habiburim, maybe it represents the Eitz HaChaim, if you will, in Gan Eden. That may help with content, but we're not talking about that just about content. We're talking about how even all the content could be certified kosher. But the question is, we're talking about the way we interact with it. They have an advantage. My WhatsApp is 100% kosher. I don't even know, can't even imagine. But is the way I interact with it, how often I check my messages, what is this doing to my attention? They are mining my attention. They are mining. People don't care about my privacy. Let them know. I don't care what they know. Let them know. Who cares? But is it somehow affecting my attention, my presence? This is something which we all have to be aware of. And basically, I'll close with basically what he points out, which is in this source sheet, is that high tech, what it created was that wasn't just creating high tech led to this network of communication. It led to the denigration of the human spirit, which we know the Medrash says in Pirkei Eliezer that at a certain point, if one of the bricks would fall, they'd be oy vey. What are we going to do? The network would fall. That's what you call it. The network is down, I guess. In Hebrew, you say nafal hareshet. If the even nafal, there's oy miya b'ivin wacher taktav. Who can replace it? If you lose a user. But if a person would fall from the tower, it'd be no problem. We got a dime a dozen. We have the workers. That's how Chazal put it. There was a problem with the humanity or the Tzelem Elokim of what's happening in the realm of our individual. They were mining us into being part of this conglomerate. And Rav says an amazing thing. Look at the technology. They took what used to be, Rav says, it used to be used stones, and you use the clay just to be the glue. They took what used to be the means and turned it into the end. The glue, which was just kind of the sticky stuff, in the Eben, which often represents a person, and by the way, each Eben is unique and individual, they turned the glue into uniform bricks. They took everything. How do you do that? You melt them down into this great furnace. And the Nitziv takes it one step further. It's furnace. Furnace. Did anyone stand? The Nitziv says that Avram Avinu was Avram Avinu because he stood up to Nimrod. Yeah, we know the story about the idol with the sun and the moon. He stood up to the tower and he said, "You cannot continue to do this." And they said, "No problem. We'll throw you into the furnace. We'll reprogram you as well." But you couldn't burn Avram Avinu. That was the same furnace. But Avram Avinu comes out to be this person standing up against this using or misusing the conglomeration of human communication and bringing everyone together in one network by amplifying it through technology for someone else's means, someone else's goals rather. Nasa Lanushem, the stocks rise, corporations know you, but it wasn't about your benefit. They did not have your benefit, and they were manipulating you to become part of this great tower. So what I'm going to send to you, I sent you the link. You find it on your own. I don't have access to those things like Netflix or YouTube, but I do have a Dropbox link of a downloaded, as we say in Hebrew, matzeget. And you know what that means? It's a matzeget. Matzeget means it's a slideshow. That's the way some yeshivas people talk about. It's a movie. Right. It's a matzeget. It's a matzeget where you can see these things. But it's a video. It's a video. Called. You can look if you have access to your own. It's called The Social Dilemma. You can make the connections to Migdal Bubble on your own. We continue to discuss this until 1:30. I just have to go. Unfortunately, I didn't realize I was going to be filming today, so I made a prior commitment to that. He was going to speak against technology and all science. I don't know.
Can he come next week?
I don't know. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, maybe I should make an announcement. If anyone wants to have a block, net free is like the best block and the cheapest.
What the thing,